Landmark Legal Foundation, Vice President Legal Affairs, Mike O'Neill, back on the program. Love having Mike because we think alike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Fawn. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good. You know, I had somebody comment to me the other day, you only have people on your show who agree with you. I say, yeah, it's my show.
My show. That's what I was just about to say.
Why would I?
You want to have on?
Why would I have some idiot on my show who doesn't know what they're talking about? That doesn't make any sense. All right. So the big, beautiful bill. I don't like everything in it. So It's big, it's beautiful, and it's a bill. But all those three words together do not completely define what's in it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I'm of the nature. My default is I don't like these hundreds of pages or however 1,000 pages if we even get
Over
to that.
3,030. Yeah.
Right. These omnibus spending bills are dangerous, and because we know why they're dangerous, because you can cram in, you can hide all kinds of appropriations or goodies to your friends. You'll see in the Inflation Reduction Act, for example, you saw billions of dollars go to these radical left-wing NGOs. Just can you imagine $1 billion going to an exempt organization? What in heaven's name could an exempt organization do with $1 billion? The mischief that they can make with it, the political activities that they can do with this sort of stuff. So of course it is dangerous when you have these omnibus spending bills. So if I had my druthers, Fawn, I would have some sort of law, or even an amendment, constitutional amendment. Anytime you're going to appropriate over X billions of dollars, you have to have single line appropriations, so that legislators actually know what they're voting for. Transparency, so that the American people know what the legislator is voting for. So if you're a member of Congress, if you're a representative or your senator votes for an omnibus spending bill, they don't just vote for 1,000 different appropriations. They vote for specific appropriations, as I think was intended by our framers. So that being said, of course, we live in the 21st century, and we don't always get what we want. We have this big, beautiful bill. We do have some good provisions. We have the tax cuts, of course, which I think are good. You have a number of provisions that are designed to address illegal immigration. I think those are obviously good. $46.45 billion for border wall construction. That's good. You do have some provisions regarding imposition of new fees for visa processing. These are almost kind of administrative processing fees, but there are pretty hefty numbers. You're talking $5,000 for, I think it's a processing of a student visa or some new visas. So these are fees that individuals who want to come into the United States and take advantage of all the benefits and wonderful things that the United States has to offer, they have to pay some fees. You have a tax on remittances. So if you come into the United States and earn money and you're going to send that money overseas, America's going to get its fair share of that money. There's going to be a remittance on that. And those provisions are designed to make the provisions regarding illegal immigration self-financing, exactly. So you don't want to have to necessarily incur more debt or deficits for this, so you're going to have to find some new revenue stream.
Right.
So there are some positives to it. Of course, as we talked about, ideally, I'd rather have it be in smaller, more directed bills.
Right. But they're called it the big, beautiful bill because there's so much in it. And the part I don't like, and I know that sometimes you have to agree to some stupid stuff to get so many good things, because that's how Washington works. And the line item thing you said is exactly what needs to happen, but it can't when you don't have enough time to read the whole thing by the time you have to vote for it. And so these high-taxed upper New England states who wanted these extra monies for their people so that they can, get reelected, there was almost a no-choicer, because if they don't get reelected, we lose the majority, and then we're really screwed.
Right. Are you talking about the SALT taxes?
Yeah.
You're talking about, exactly. I mean, and you're essentially, when you're penalizing people who don't pay property taxes in their own state, or who have lower property tax rates, and you're saying, okay, well, if you live in a state that's going to have these big state taxations impositions, these heavy tax states, you're going to increase the level of deductions for those people. You're having red states financing blue states, and it's just, generally that's the kind of the rule there. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions to it, but there's generally the rule there. And there's certain compromises that have to be made. Again, we talk about a lot of the DOGE cuts. A lot of people were concerned about the fact that there were no cuts to waste, fraud, and abuse. That actually demands an explanation. I think your listeners should hear that. The reason those Doge cuts they are being presented to Congress. They're presented in rescission packages. It's important to talk about those because it's actually kind of a better thing that they're outside the big beautiful bill, because if you're going to have a Doge cut, for example, USAID, you could package that as a rescission package and present that to Congress, both houses, and those rescission packages are voted on by simple majority. So you don't need to have a 2/3 supermajority in the Senate to get through any of these rescission packages. So I am optimistic. Again, I've wavered in this, and one day you'll talk to me a couple of months ago, and I might have been saying rescission is the answer for these Doge cuts. Then I lost some faith in it, and the fact that I didn't see it it kind of was put on the back burner for the big beautiful bill. Now you see the director of the OMB and you're seeing the Secretary of the Treasury talking about the rescission packages going up in front of Congress. So the work that Doge has done to identify waste, fraud, and abuse hopefully can be codified. And again, the codification, codification by Congress is necessary to ensure that you don't have all these activist court judges overturning any efforts to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Mm-hmm. I think that you're going to see that in the next couple of weeks as well.
Well, that's insane to begin with. So who doesn't want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse? And if you do want to, what are you doing? That's just dumb. Now, this whole Elon Musk and Trump don't like each other thing is a rumor. It's not true. They still very much like each other. I think Elon left. He didn't like the fact that they were still going to be spending as much as they did when he worked so hard to cut. I think that that would have bruised my ego a little bit too. But he kind of needs to go save his own companies.
Right. I mean, it was always a temporary thing. I mean, this was always going to be, I don't know if it was a 100-day or it was whatever it was. But I think the aspects are still here. Again, I would love to see structural reforms to this. I mean, really, these cuts to waste, fraud, and abuse are, of course, necessary and important. And, of course, the tariffs you see are increased revenue. You also see, tax cuts result in the economy growing. I think we're going to have a 4.6 first quarter growth for this in GDP growth. That's an amazing number. So to get a hold, these are all strategies. How do you get a hold of the debt and deficit, right? You can grow the economy. You can have new revenue streams in the forms of tariffs. Obviously, we don't want to have new revenues. We don't want to have increase in taxes because that acts as a constraint. But ultimately, it comes down to it. We're going to have to tackle systematic entitlement reform at some point here because those are that represents so much of the federal budget and the federal expenditures. Mm-hmm. So ideally, again, we're speaking pie in the sky stuff. I would like to see, Medicaid, Medicare. The good news is there was that identification of the Medicaid, so we're looking at reforming Medicaid to some extent. But Medicare and Social Security reform are necessary ultimately to get the debt and deficits under control. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, once we get these initial wave of legislation packages through, we're going to be able to tackle that as well.
How many times have you watched Judge Judy and she says, "Where do you work?" And they're like, "I'm on disability." They're perfectly fine. They're standing. Right. There's nothing wrong. What'd you do? Break your pinky and now you can't type? I mean, what happened? We have so many people on disability who don't belong there. Now, I am not saying everyone, so don't send me 50 emails, because there are people who are very mentally ill, disabled, elderly, sick, or whatever the case may be, who deserve to be on Social Security or disability. But I know some children whose parents died when they were very, very young who get Social Security because the parents paid for it and they've got to be taken care of. So I understand that not everybody is a waste, fraud, and abuser, but there are a ton of them, and if we could root them out, that'd be great. But what I wanted to ask you about next, Mike, since you know everything, and that's why I like having you on, I'm really cool with helping Arizona a little bit with everything they had to spend, because they were just swamped. I mean, it was horrible.
Right. That's another aspect of these immigration packages. Is you're going to talk about some remittance to states that had to expend money during the immigration crisis. And let's just call it an immigration crisis, illegal immigration crisis. Yeah. This was 4 years. First of all, you had 8 years of Obama, which was, of course, getting the system set up for this.
At least he deported some people.
Yeah, and then you had 4 years of just absolute insanity where there was, I think it's becoming clear now, there was no controls. No structural controls were instituted at any point in 4 years. And so you had tens of millions, if not 20 million people. And states were trying to do what they could. States like Texas and Arizona. Remember, we saw those instances where Texas was trying to mobilize their National Guard. Yeah. The governor is saying, look, I got to do something. States like Arizona were like, well, we have to construct some sort of barrier here because we just can't have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people people streaming across the border every day.
And we can't stand arm in arm like Red Rover with a bunch of dudes standing there either. There aren't enough people.
And so those states are entitled to remittance. And I think that, look, they tried to hold the line during this crisis. And they encouraged their citizens and their taxpayers in their states shouldn't have to bear the burden of trying to hold the line to protect the United States from this onslaught of illegal immigrants. And we're seeing the effects of it, for heaven's sakes, Fawn. I mean, look at what happened the other day with the individual standing outside the burning
oh, my
protesters.
Lord.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think the extent to which this immigration crisis, it's just going to unfold. The amount of children. We're going to get reports of children being trafficked across the border throughout the country. We still don't know how many kids, unaccompanied minors, were brought across and for nefarious purposes. The fentanyl crisis, all of the deaths from fentanyl. And incidentally, it's funny. The Washington Post had this article that came out, I think, yesterday that said fentanyl seizures across the border mysteriously are down. Mysteriously down? Well, of course fentanyl seizures are down because nobody's crossing the border anymore because we're actually enforcing our immigration laws and enforcing our border control laws. So imagine that. Fentanyl seizures are down on the border because fentanyl is not flowing into the United States like it was the past 4 years.
And we also put the clamp on Canada and said, do something about yours. So everything that needed to be done finally got done day one. I mean, it was like I almost couldn't keep up with how fast things were coming at me because everything that was absolutely ridiculous was getting twisted around on its can and put right. And so a lot of the left are freaking out because they're like, he shouldn't be able to sign so many executive orders. I'm like, your guy did that from day one with the Keystone Pipeline. It just, executive orders have gotten out of hand for both parties. Mm-hmm. And Congress is almost losing its will to live. I don't know what's going on with them. But judicial activism is a huge problem, and I think we should address that next.
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the big issues that's coming about is the extent to which courts have these equitable powers. And we're talking about equitable powers. These are the micromanaging. You're seeing the judges are saying, okay, well, I want to insert myself into the process whereby I manage how the Department of Homeland Security apprehends, deports, and remits individuals to under the Alien Enemies Act, and see if a judge can micromanage the process, which is, of course, not their job. The job of a judge is certainly not to micromanage the affairs of the executive branch. Mm-hmm. And I want to see some curtailing of the equitable powers of the judiciary. You're going to see, I think, the Supreme Court, fingers crossed, we never know exactly what's going to happen, is poised to limit the power of these judges to issue universal injunctions. That's going to be a step towards that. Ideally, I don't know whether we're going to see any action on Congress, but certainly the judiciary is doing immeasurable harm to itself by inserting itself into the political processes and into the affairs of the executive branch. Yeah. Now, I understand that there are limitations to executive orders, and goodness knows, during the Biden administration, I talk a lot about that. But you have to understand that there are a lot of emergency provisions that are at play here and emergency causes. When you come in and the house is on fire, you need to take steps to put that fire out. And that's essentially what the Trump administration came into back in January. Yeah,
and he had everything written up before he was even elected. So he knew he was going to win. And so he's like, let's have everything written up. I'm just going to sign, baby, sign. It's going to be one thing right after the other. So then the left just collectively crapped the bed and started screaming about how bad executive orders are until they realized that their guys did a lot too. And so I think we need to rein in executive orders to a little bit because I want Congress to be able to be the ones who make the decisions. But if we're going to have 3,000-page bills, they only get 2 days to read. I believe Nancy Pelosi said that she's going to read every single page of everything put in front of her, which is a damn lie. But, I just really feel like everything is upside down, and Trump's trying to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, and ideally, as our Constitution was structured, Congress should be the body that is taking the lead in so many of these issues and should be doing their jobs. But for better or for worse, politics is taking control. I am frustrated when you see the number of days working. I mean, it's amazing if you actually look at the calendar, the congressional calendar. I think your listeners and should be aware of this is how few days members of Congress are actually working in the next couple of months. I mean, it's everybody. I don't know about you. I mean, you, me, everybody else in the United States goes to work. We work 9 to 5 at a minimum, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. Now, why is Congress taking the month of August off, for example? I mean, well, they're completely off. You're not taking the month of August off. I'm not taking the month of August off. You're telling me that Congress can't come in for a couple weeks to get some business for the American people done in a couple weeks in Congress, that they all have to fly home to their requisite jurisdiction, that they can't be passing rescission packages, they can't be instituting new legislation in those weeks. Time is of the essence. We only have a couple months before everybody starts talking about the midterm elections.
I know. God help me. You know, I agree with you, but sometimes I'd rather have them be doing nothing than something because sometimes their somethings are horrifying. But Mike O'Neill, Vice President for Legal Affairs, Landmark Legal Foundation, where do they go to learn more about your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill and other topics?
Just check out our website, landmarklegal.org, landmarklegal.org.
It's that simple. Thank you, Mike.
Take care, Fawn. See you next time.
Bye-bye.